They called her a ghost long before she vanished. Not because she haunted the seas, but because she defied everything the world believed a woman should be. Her name was Elise Durant, born in a fishing village on the coast of Brittany, raised on salt and hardship. She learned early that the sea gave nothing freely. Her father was a sailor, her mother a widow by 20. By 16, Elise had already buried 2 brothers claimed by the waves. The ocean had taken everything from her, and she swore she would take something back. When she was 17, she disguised herself as a cabin boy and signed onto a merchant ship bound for Port Royal. For a time, she scrubbed decks and took orders like a shadow. But the Caribbean was a cruel place in the year 1717. The trade winds carried not only ships of gold and sugar, but flags of black and crimson, pirates preying on the fat bellies of empire. One such ship, the Hollow Serpent, took their vessel under cannon fire. The crew surrendered, trembling. Elise did not. When the pirates boarded, she stood with a marlinspike in her hand and eyes like a storm. The pirate captain, a man called Silas Graves, saw something in her defiance that he hadn't seen in years, a will unbroken. He offered her a choice, join them or die. She joined. For years, the Hollow Serpent roamed the Caribbean like a phantom. Graves was ruthless, but fair in the way only pirates could be. On that ship, there were no kings, no lords, only skill and loyalty. Elise shed her disguise and claimed her place among them. The crew called her the Sea Wraith, for she moved through battle like smoke, swift, silent, unstoppable. They said cannon fire sounded different when she gave the order to fire. She became first mate, then captain, after Graves fell to fever in Havana Harbor. Under her command, the Serpent struck fear into the merchants of Britain and Spain alike. She raided sugar ships, freed slaves from galleons, and burned the flags of kings. But freedom, as the sea taught her, always comes with a price. By 1724, the British Admiralty had grown desperate to crush piracy once and for all. They sent warships, letters of marque, and hangmen across the Atlantic. Bounties hung in every port, and whispers of amnesty tempted even the most loyal crews. Elise refused. "A pardon from a king I never served," she said, "isn't worth the paper it's written on." That defiance sealed her fate. One humid night near Nassau, the Serpent was cornered by 2 Royal Navy frigates. The battle raged from dusk till dawn. Cannonballs ripped through the hull, masts crashed, and smoke swallowed the stars. Elise fought until her powder ran out, and her men lay bleeding on the deck. When the British boarded, they found her standing at the bow, sword drawn, bloodied but unbowed. "Do your duty," she told the lieutenant. "You'll find I've already done mine." She was taken in chains to Port Royal, the same port she had once entered as a frightened girl. The trial that followed was no trial at all. The Admiralty Court convened inside a converted storehouse that smelled of gunpowder and mildew. The judges wore their wigs like crowns, and the clerk read her crimes as though they were scripture. There were no juries for pirates, only sentences. Witnesses came, merchants who'd lost cargo, sailors who'd turned informant, even one of her own crew who'd bargained for his life. Elise listened without a word. When asked if she had anything to say in her defense, she raised her head and answered, "A court that serves a king who steals the world has no right to call me thief." The courtroom went silent. Her sentence was death by hanging at Execution Dock in London. The journey across the Atlantic was slow and cruel. Shackled in the belly of a prison ship, she endured the stench of rot, the cries of the dying, the gnawing hunger that turned days into weeks. The guards mocked her, calling her the Lady Captain, but she never spoke. Only once did she break her silence, when a sailor whispered that he had once seen her ship sail against the wind. "The wind listens to no one," she replied, "only to those who have earned its respect." When they finally reached the Thames, winter had set in. The river was grey and swollen, the air thick with frost. From her cell in Newgate Prison, Elise could hear the bells of St. Paul's tolling each dawn. They said the execution would be public, as all pirate hangings were. Crowds would come from miles around, bringing their children to watch the Empire's justice. The morning came. She was led through the streets in an open cart, her hands bound, her hair loose around her shoulders. The crowd jeered, though some fell silent when they saw her face, calm, pale, resolute. At Wapping, the gallows waited, the tide creeping slowly beneath. The noose hung like a promise. A preacher read from the Psalms. She said nothing. When asked for her last words, she looked toward the river and whispered, "The sea takes what it's owed." And when the trap was released, the rope went taut, and the world fell still. They left her body hanging until the third tide, as the law required. The river rose and fell, washing over her boots, her coat, her name. And when it was done, they cut her down and buried her in an unmarked grave beyond the walls of Wapping, where the soil was mixed with the ashes of countless others who had defied the crown. But her story did not end there. Sailors began to speak of her again, quietly, in taverns and between storms. They said that on nights when the fog rolls thick over the Thames, a lone ship appears on the horizon, its lanterns burning blue. A woman stands at the helm, her eyes like the sea before a storm. Some say it's a ghost ship, others a curse, but the old sailors call it justice. Years passed. The British Empire continued to hang pirates by the hundreds, but never again did they catch another woman at sea. The name Elise Durant vanished from records, erased by the same hands that wrote her sentence. Yet her legend spread like fire through whispers and songs. The Sea Wraith, they called her, the woman who defied kings and tides alike. Her story, like so many others, was buried under centuries of ink and silence. But pieces remain, in letters, in sailors' journals, in the quiet corners of history, where truth hides when power commands it to disappear. And if you look long enough, you can still find traces. A name carved into the beam of an old dock in Port Royal, a weathered compass in a museum with no recorded owner, a ship's log that ends mid-sentence, as if interrupted by the sea itself. Historians call her myth. The Navy calls her fiction. But the sea remembers. For the sea remembers everyone it has taken. It remembers Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who fought beside men and died in chains. It remembers Mary Critchett, who swung from the gallows without a prayer. It remembers the countless unnamed women who were never granted even the dignity of a record. The sea carries their stories in its depths, where no empire can reach. Sometimes when the wind howls across the Atlantic, sailors swear they hear their voices, not screaming, but singing. A low, mournful song carried over the waves, soft as a whisper, strong as a vow. A song that says, "We were here, we lived, we were free." And perhaps that is why the British Empire feared them so deeply. Not because they were criminals, but because they were proof. Proof that freedom could be found beyond law, beyond kings, beyond men. Their lives were brief, their punishments cruel, their memories nearly erased. Yet every tide that rises, every storm that breaks upon the coast, carries their defiance forward. Because courage cannot be drowned. And though their names fade from the pages of history, the sea will never let them go.